Hello, and welcome to today's episode. I'm going to be your host, the Irrelevant Nerd. Today, we're going to be talking about are the MCU movies back on track? Now, this is only going to be the movies. I'm not going to include the Disney Plus shows. I don't believe that the Disney Plus shows have ever really been on track. They have had some that have been more enjoyable than others, but I think that every single Disney Plus show is flawed. We'll talk about that at a different episode. So today we're going to talk about the movies. Now, it's no secret that the MCU has really just been on decline and life support since Endgame. Like, we've had these big event films like Spider-Man, a lot of fun, made a ton of money, but it's mostly sold off the gimmick of the old Spider-Man villains and having the old Spider-Men come back into the movie. And it's a great movie, don't get me wrong, but it really only made as much money as it did because of all of that nostalgia that's built in. So I'm looking back over the past 18 months. We're, half of the way through 2025. So we're going to be looking at the movies that came out in 2024 and 2025. So 3 have come out in that time, and then we have one more coming out in about a month, finishing up this year's run for the MCU movies with the Fantastic Four. So if we look back over these past, 3 movies, including this, 4th one upcoming, Deadpool and Wolverine was, the only MCU movie that came out in 2024, and it is good, and I had a lot of fun with it. And initially it was met with a lot of praise, not as much from the critics, but the fans really seemed to love it. The internet was having a good time with it, but then the internet did what the internet does, and like 2 months later the consensus on the movie was fractured, and some people were saying it was total shit. Some people were saying that it was still fantastic. I think it's a fun time at the movies. It's obviously a flawed story when you look at it. It's not the most compelling narrative for a movie, but the cameos, the humor, for me, it really all worked, and it made a ton of money. I think 1.3 something like that $1 billion. And so one of the higher grossing movies to have come out in the MCU since Endgame. And so, I'm going to count that one as a win. And then the next movie we jump forward to, I believe it's February of this year, 2025, and we get Captain America: Brave New World. Now, so I'm a little bit higher on this movie than some other people are. I'm not super high on it, but a lot of people, it's around between the 50s and 60s on Rotten Tomato, I believe. I'm a little bit higher than that. I think it's a C- movie. I mean, it's pretty average, nothing spectacular, but nothing too terrible for me other than, some shoddy CGI. And there are a few scenes that are very obviously part of the reshoots, which is really kind of a bummer, especially because the reshoots were to add Giancarlo Esposito as a great actor, but every scene that he's in, you can feel that it's a reshoot because he's barely interacting with anybody. It's mostly just a lot of one-on-one with Sam Wilson outside of a few action scenes, and so it ended up making, I think, $415 million. It is technically profitable, but it's just barely profitable and wasn't universally loved by fans or critics. And so I wouldn't put it as in the loss category, but it's certainly not a win. And so I don't know, it kind of seems to sort of cancel out any momentum that Deadpool and Wolverine might have been able to start. Deadpool and Wolverine, technically MCU, but it is just its own standalone story, and so I guess it just didn't really get people revamped for the mainline MCU movies. So I'll put it just kind of in the middle. So we have one win, one that's a tie. I guess we'll call it, which will bring us to the most recent MCU movie. Came out just about a month ago, and you have the Thunderbolts or New Avengers as they're marketing it, but I believe that the official title is still Thunderbolts, and that's what it will always be. It was just being marketed as the New Avengers, and I really think that was just as a push to get more people to go see the movie. Now, I saw this movie like 3 times within a week when it first came out, and I wasn't particularly excited for it, but I was truly blown away by this movie. It definitely has its flaws, as most of like the later MCU movies have had, the past 5 years now, and I get that, but I loved the message of the movie, and I found a lot of it very touching and resonated with me on a personal level. And so for me, it might be right at that top 5 in the entire MCU. And to me, that feels nice to say, because since Endgame came out, when you talk about the MCU movies, there's always this caveat of like, oh, this is like one of the best ones to come out since Endgame. And it always has that little notch of like, oh yeah, it's enjoyable, but it's not, it's not the same as it was. And for me, I can come out and be like, oh, this is like maybe a top 5 MCU movie for me, and not even just since Endgame, just of all time. And so I really, really loved this movie. The critics were very, very high on this movie. The fans who went and saw it are very, very high on this movie. But unfortunately, the biggest downside, and this is so important, unfortunately, just due to movies being a business, but Thunderbolts is technically considered a financial flop, and it's only made about $372 million so far. Might make a little more, but it is going to end up losing Marvel Studios some money, and that's a real shame, because I feel like it's a very strong performer, and it did seem to have pretty good a word of mouth online from like me. My friends seem to really enjoy it, and I'm kind of disheartened, and I think it really shows how broken the MCU has become with some of these projects like Quantumania or Love and Thunder, which are just terrible. And really, I just feel kind of broke any remaining excitement that a lot of fans might have had that the MCU could, return to its old glory. So this one, it's a win in terms of the story and how people reacted to the movie. Lost financially, but I do think that at least from a storytelling perspective, this movie shows that they're really trying hard to actually make individual stories matter again. And so I'm going to count this one as a win, because out of the 2 out of 3 kind of criteria that you're looking at, if you critic reactions, fan reactions, and then box office, 2 out of 3 positive. I'm going to count it as a win, but just as a slight win. So 2 out of the past 3 movies have been a win. One of them's a tie. No losses. That's pretty good. Again, though, the wins come with weird caveats, like Deadpool and Wolverine, really recognized more as a Deadpool movie than it is as an MCU movie. Captain America Brave New World did technically make new profit, but didn't excite anybody, and Thunderbolts is unfortunately going to lose money, despite it being a actually very good movie. And so we look forward to the last movie coming out in 2025 with the Fantastic Four. And I have had mixed feelings about this movie pretty much since production started. I did have a lot of questions about the cast. Like, I love Pedro Pascal, don't get me wrong, but I don't know if I saw him as Reed Richards when they first announced it, and I didn't like it. And I was like, well, they obviously cast him because he's Pedro Pascal, and he's one of the biggest actors in the world right now, and so I get it, and I do think he'll do a good job, but it was not a pick that, like, actively excited me or anything like that. But the trailers for this one have really won me over. It seems to have such a unique feel, and it's technically in a different dimension than the mainline MCU, like, or 616, or I believe it's 616 is what the MCU is. And so different world, and it looks like it has its own feel, and that's very exciting to me because the consistency of the MCU is nice, but the sameness of a lot of the movies does start to wear on you after a while. So the trailers have completely won me over for this. I'm excited for Pedro Pascal now and then the rest of the cast. I do think it's a little weird that for The Thing, they just have like a normal dude's voice, that there's no like gravel effect on it or anything like that. But other than that, I've loved everything that I've seen. There's been a lot of positive talk behind the scenes from some scoopers and YouTubers that I watch. And so it all seems like this is kind of trending up for the Fantastic Four, as well as initial ticket sales are already domestically for the opening weekend are, I believe, like at $134 million as of this morning. And so it's a pretty solid number. And so I think that the Fantastic Four is very pivotal in kind of examining how the MCU might be able to recover. If this movie comes out and does big things, I think that you'll see a trend back up of the box office, especially as we're coming to the next Avengers movies, regardless of people's feelings about Robert Downey Jr. coming back and you know, if they're just kind of playing it safe and things like that. But I think if this movie comes out, does well financially, with fans and with critics, I think that you can argue that even though the box offices have still been a little bit down from where they were, you know, when every single MCU movie was, you know, $1 billion+ movie, I do think that you can say that it's trending up and it's back on track if the Fantastic Four lands. Now, obviously, you have to kind of keep going, you know, keep the consistency up, keep getting win after win. You can't have just, you know, one win, one meh, one win, one meh. That's not going to keep people coming in and out. And the less money these movies make, the less faith Disney will have in them overall, and the budgets will get smaller and things will just look shittier and talent will get shittier surrounding the projects. And then eventually the MCU will dive off, which after Endgame, it probably could have used like a 5-year break before it came back, but I don't want these movies to end. I'm, you know, big nerd. I love watching them. I just want them to be better. But I think when you look back over the past 18 months, I think it's been just solid enough to say that we're back on track. We haven't gained any momentum or speed yet, but I think we're right on the cusp. And I think a lot of it is going to kind of, you know, be based off of how successful Fantastic Four is financially, as well as the reception from critics and fans. So I'm feeling good. I'm feeling pretty good saying that we are back on track. You know, as the internet likes to say, we are so back. And so I'm thinking for maybe not the next episode, but the episode after, I might talk about the Disney Plus shows. They're kind of a chore because I really have not loved a lot of them, and I don't want to rewatch any of them, so I can kind of like articulate my feelings, like such as Secret Invasion I watched through the one time, and the only thing that I remember about that show is that emotionally I didn't think it was very good. I remember feeling very negative on the show, but I can't remember any specifics because it also just was not memorable at all. So we'll see. But at some point I will talk about them. I just don't know if it'll be, you know, sooner or later. But thank you guys so much for checking in. Comment down below if you think, you know, if you agree, are we back on track? Is it still kind of in the same weird space that it's been since Endgame was done? Or do you think it's dead, just kind of based looking at the box offices? You know, let me know what you think, and have a great rest of your day, and I'll catch you in the next one.